having said that, this month the goal was to talk about gender in a few different ways.
Kind of like debunking things that have gender that shouldn't.
Yeah. And so today we want to talk about emotions and how we tend to ascribe gender to emotions, which really just amounts to...
Or even the idea of being emotional has been gendered.
Right. And there's a couple things wrong with that. First of all, being emotional has come to be defined as being like sad, or being maybe dramatic, or being, like that's how we've come to define emotional in general. Like, oh, you're so
or
emotional. Or
being irrational, right? Which and I'm not. Emotions can be irrational.
Yeah.
But like, especially like when we're gendering being emotional as feminine.
Yeah.
And women do that. That we're emotional and we can't make rational decisions because we're emotional. But you can both make a rational decision and be emotional. And of course, being emotional is not a feminine trait. I think what is also helpful to understand when using words like that is that emotion is vast. Emotion is I always like to remind people when they say, oh, you're being emotional, that anger is an emotion, because I think we tend to forget that, and that also makes it easier for us to say that men are not emotional, because we don't come to define like anger as an emotion, and not to say that men are just angry, but it is it's a more acceptable emotion for them to be.
Yes, and when they are emotional that way, we accept that anger as them being, just strong, or being, being an executive.
Right. A position of power.
Right.
Powerful.
Being powerful.
Superior. In charge.
Right. So
whereas if we're sad, and we like gender that is more feminine.
Right.
That we're weak.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not true.
So when men are sad,
they're soft.
We describe them with these other things that we use to sort of categorize what it means to be feminine.
Literally use like really inappropriate words when a man is maybe feeling sad, or the more vulnerable emotions, although angry is pretty vulnerable.
Yeah.
But that we would we would make fun of him, or people will mock him by calling him like
a baby, or acting like a girl,
or a wimp, or a sissy, or which is gendering the fact that he has feelings, which is wrong.
Which is horrible.
Horrible.
I wanted to bring up. I googled a list of emotions, and I just wanted to mention a couple of them so that we can wrap our minds around the fact that emotional could mean so many different things, and as you know, we believe words matter, so be aware.
Words matter.
Happiness, anger, sadness, love, anxiety, fear, disgust, shame, embarrassment, pride, and it's June.
Envy, guilt.
Right, envy, guilt, interest of some kind, jealousy, annoyance, frustration, rage. All of these things,
apathy,
are emotions that you can experience, and that we all experience, because all people experience emotions. So just wanted to put that out there in terms of just defining what emotion is, and therefore hopefully debunking the myth that emotion is gendered, because it's not. It's something that we all experience as humans, and that's normal and healthy to experience.
And to debunk the idea that being emotional means like you're crying all the time, or dramatic, or sad, or depressed. No, it's not just that. That's just one emotion.
Exactly.
Couple emotions.
Exactly. And I think it's also helpful to, when thinking about how people gender emotions, why do we do this? Like, when we're telling someone that they're too emotional, or that they're being emotional, or whatever,
and it's a criticism,
what is the purpose in that? Like, what are we actually doing? Like, what's the actual motive behind that? And to me, it's usually, if it's criticism, it is to, sort of like control them.
Shame them.
To shame them and make them feel bad about the thing. So, for an example, you tend to see people do that when, like, if I accuse you of doing something, you might, and I'm, feeling extremely vulnerable, and I'm feeling like the impact of what you did, and I'm experiencing emotions, you might throw back in my face, oh, you're being so emotional right now. And it's like,
which would devalue the way I made you feel, or the thing that I did that made you feel that way, right? And instead of, regardless of how it made you emote,
right,
what you said mattered,
right,
and I shouldn't discount or devalue that, right? Like,
right. The focus
if you
be
say it
on
through
what
tears,
happened.
I should hear you. If you say it through anger, I should hear you. Right? Like, I want to hear your point. Now, having said that, as communicators, easier to hear somebody when they're speaking from a place of good intent, love, and trying to make things better. So, like, screaming something at somebody, it is harder for them to hear you, right? Saying it through sobbing tears without being able to, like, have a moment of peace, it is harder. But to say it through watery eyes is not problematic. Like, that's how it makes you feel. And it's also should be helpful to the receiver of that message. Like, if you were telling me I hurt your feelings through full eyes, I would be like, oh, that really mattered to you. That was a big deal.
Yeah, so it should be showing any emotion should be assigned to whoever you're speaking to. One, that, like, there's a certain level of trust and vulnerability that's happening, and two, it should also, like you said, say, this is the impact. This is meaningful. There is, that helps to ascribe meaning to what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I would say also on the flip, because sometimes they're, like, less, I don't want to say less emotional, not less emotional, but maybe people express less physical evidence of emotion, right? Like, maybe I don't cry a lot, but I still tell you, like, that are my feelings.
Right.
We need to take that seriously.
Right.
Like, if I say that made me really sad when you did that, but I'm not crying, you still have to believe that I'm sad, right?
Right. So it's kind of like, it's interesting because it's kind of like either way. If someone is being emotional, then it's your job, maybe if you're, like, hearing a message from them, to hear the message, and you can take the emotion as a way of deepening the message, possibly, or not. And then if they're telling you something and they're not being emotional, but it sounds like something that they would be emotional about, still take it as...
And how about this? How about they are being emotional? We are emotional beings. We have emotions about everything.
Yeah.
How that manifests and expresses out of us is different. So tears are not an emotion, right? They're a manifestation of how I express my emotion.
Right. And that
sadness
could be
is the emotion.
A variety.
I
it
could
look be sadness,
just like this and be sad.
It could be sadness. It could be joy.
Right.
It could be so many things.
Like, I could be like,
tears.
That was hilarious.
Right.
and I would mean it. I do that all the
Me
time.
too.
And I'm like, that was hilarious.
Yes.
And people are like, really? Because you're not smiling. And I'm like, no, it was.
But it was
hilarious.
Yeah. It's all about how
that.
you communicate. And so maybe being more concerned with investigating and being curious about how people communicate and what they're saying versus...
Which brings us back to being impeccable.
Right. Versus putting
matter.
people into boxes like, well, if they were really sad about it, they would have been crying.
Right.
Right.
Which I think, like, happens... I've seen this at, like, funerals. Sad topic, right? But, like, some people, like, overdo it because they feel like, I want to make sure people know this person really mattered, so they want to, like, emote and show and, like, physically show a manifestation of emotion. And then there are other people that are like, well, no, I wasn't crying, but I was sad.
Right. Yeah, however you express or choose not to express or just naturally don't express emotion is fine.
It's all good.
So take that with you guys this week, this weekend, this week, And we will see you next Friday. We teach love.